Back with you, the sports leader, Dieter Kurtenbach, hanging out until 2 p.m. We'll get JD back on the horn at some point. He's heading over to Harmonic so that he can do Dubs OT. Saquon Barkley, 2 games against the Rams this year, 459 yards rushing. Seems good, Larry. Larry Krueger joining us on the line. How you doing, Larry?
Good to talk to you, Dieter. How are you, man?
I'm doing. I'm a little conflicted, Larry, because as much as I enjoyed watching and listening to football this weekend, and we get some more tonight with the national championship game, I can't get over how much of a missed opportunity it feels like for the 49ers to just be in the tournament. They could have done something, maybe not this team, but like the NFC's not very good, Larry, and I'm unimpressed by what I see in terms of the caliber of play, and it's just annoying that the 49ers couldn't get their act enough together to get into this tournament, because I think something could have happened had they just pulled together, I don't know, one iota of competence this year.
You know, it was a very frustrating year. They were absolutely horrible on special teams all year long. They weren't good on defense, and they didn't take care of the ball. I mean, I don't know if you noticed this weekend, but the 4 winners, Kansas City, Washington, Philadelphia, and Buffalo, were plus 10.
Yeah.
Plus 10 in turnovers. They had 10 more turnovers than the teams that they beat.
I'll throw at you one more little.
Turnovers are the big deal.
I said this going into the break, Larry. The only team in the playoffs to win a game and have a turnover was the Texans against the Chargers. Everybody else has been over. So,
yeah,
and it's a ball that isn't round. It bounces weird ways sometimes. They played in snow and sleet. So there's a little bit of luck involved in all of this. But were you impressed by any team? We're all impressed by Jaden Daniels. We all, I don't know if we're impressed by Patrick Mahomes anymore or Josh Allen, but did any team, did any operation, did any program stand out to you this weekend as, oh, that's the team?
Well, as far as the team, no, because all these teams have some flaws. But I was very impressed by Vic Fangio's defense.
Yep.
I mean, the Rams were cooking on offense. Stafford, Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyron, their line was gelling. They came in with momentum, and they still gave up. I mean, Fangio's defense was not infallible. They gave up 402 total yards. They got out yardage 402 to 350. They got out passed 291 to 65. But when it mattered, Jalen Carter stepped up with a huge sack on 3rd down. Zach Bond, who was just a guy in New Orleans,
right,
who's an all-pro linebacker for Fangio, he stepped up, almost ended an entire series by himself. They lost Quinyon Mitchell, who's one of the great young corners in the game, early in the first quarter, and they found a way to make it work and to get through that game and to step up. And they kept Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out of the end zone. Stafford threw for 324, but they sacked him 5 times. And I just thought Philly's defense, they were getting pushed around and they were down some guys. And it didn't look good, especially at the end. And they needed someone to step up and make a play. And it was Jalen freaking Carter who stepped up with a major sack on that 3rd down. I mean, the Rams, if you watch that game and you see 28-22, Eagles won, you figure, it was probably all Eagles. No, the Rams were on the doorstep to winning that game 29-28.
That's right.
Except for Jalen Carter sack on 3rd down. Otherwise, take away that negative play on 3rd down. And the Rams probably were going in for the touchdown and the victory on the road. So I thought Fangio, without Quinyon Mitchell, I thought his defense really stepped up. C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I mean, it wasn't just one guy either. It was an array of guys. I mean, their entire defensive front really came to play. Zach Bond was amazing, but Jalen Carter had 2 sacks. Nolan Smith had a sack.
Yeah.
Ajomo, the Texas kid, got in. The rookie Jalix Hunt. I mean, they got after it, and very impressed by them.
Well, you note that they might have won the game on that play that Jalen Carter got the sack, because you see the all-22 Higbee was wide open. If Stafford can deliver that ball the Rams are playing in the NFC Championship game. I mean, they're hosting the NFC Championship game, but noting the defensive line of the Eagles and then juxtaposing that to their offensive line, which I consider the best in football, and it's certainly the best still playing with Detroit out. Doesn't that say a lot about what the 49ers need to prioritize this offseason? If they didn't already know, isn't seeing the Eagles have a dominant defensive line, which a year ago, if you would have told me they had a dominant defensive line, I would have scoffed at you. But here they are. They have a dominant defensive line, and Carter is playing as well as any defensive player in the league right now. Offensive line, steady as she goes. It remains the best in football and certainly in the top conversation. The Niners, meanwhile, their line's totally deteriorated this past year. I mean, doesn't that have to be priority number one, fix the trenches this offseason for the Niners?
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, you can debate it, and we will consistently between now and April.
You know we will.
D tackle, O tackle, but I think that's really the first round debate. Do you go D tackle or do you go O tackle? Now, there could always be another player, and you never know how the draft's going to fall and how the workouts are going to go and who's going to look good in the combine and the All-Star games. There's a lot between now and April, but I think it's Dane Brugler had his mock draft the other day, and he said, hey, man, the Niners need an offensive tackle and a defensive tackle. And he had Anthony Membo from Missouri, your old stomping grounds, going number 11. And he had Walter Nolan going to them at 43 in round 2. And if that's the way the Niners start their draft, I'd be totally pleased with that. But yeah. I was very impressed by Philadelphia, by Hurts. I wonder about Hurts's ability to get back up off the canvas, off this injury, because these injuries, he played and he finished the game, but his knees got wrenched. He's got to be feeling like hell this morning. I got to think that he's not going to be his full mobility by next Sunday. They're probably not going to have Quinyon Mitchell. I think this is setting up nicely for the Commanders, to be honest.
So give me a reason as to why the Commanders can go to the Super Bowl besides Daniels. Because it really, right now, and maybe this is a casual take, but from my perspective, it feels like it's Daniels just taking them anywhere they need to go, and that as a team, as an overall operation, the Commanders are still a work in progress, that they haven't even really started their rebuild yet, and they're just kind of getting by with this rookie quarterback who I think I called him on your stream the other day, feels transcendent. Give me a reason why the Commanders can play for the championship that isn't Jaden Daniels.
Well, there's a lot of reasons, really. But one, I do feel like they've got Jaden Daniels is so young that he doesn't even realize that he should be feeling pressure right now. There's old, there's young, and then there's so young that you're impervious to the pressure.
Just the innocence and ignorance of youth. Yeah.
Yeah, he's impervious to the pressure. He doesn't feel it. He is a calm kid who looks really, really calm and poised. So that's one. But you said beyond Daniels.
And give me a reason. I mean, obviously Daniels is going to be there. He's going to do his thing. That's reason A, one, whatever. But what else do the Commanders have going on that it can't just be him that they're in this position?
Yeah, well, you can't speed him up. So that's one. Okay, so that's and if you don't put a lot of
Larry.
Yeah, if you don't put a lot of pressure on him, though, he's going to sit back there and carve you. And what's really underrated about the Commanders is their weapons. McLaurin is a number one.
Right.
He's very, very solid. But they also can dump it in the flat to an Austin Eckler. He's as good a receiving running back as there is. Diami Brown is like a name that nobody really knows. He's had a phenomenal second half. Look at his game log.
It's been fantastic.
Zach Ertz is a literally a Travis Kelce type tight end. Ball skills wise, he's just an older guy. And Crowder's also a really dependable receiver. So they've got a really underrated group of receivers. Okay. That's one. Okay. But the real reason that the Commanders have come so far, so fast is that we know they have a great defensive front. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, those guys up front, Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler in free agency. But you really are good in the NFL when you have two shutdown corners. And that's why Kamari Lassiter and Stingley Jr.
Unbelievable.
I love that matchup. I love their Houston's ability to take away Kansas City's receivers. I'm like, oh, they're going to shut off Kansas City's receivers because they got 2 number 1 corners. Well, look at the Commanders. Quietly, when nobody was noticing, they drafted Mikey Sainristil out of Michigan. Sainristil was one of the best players on Michigan's team last year. He is one of the reasons that they won the national championship. He was the guy that had the interception that clinched the national championship.
Right.
He's a small player, but you can't confuse small with, not impactful. He's 5'10", 180, but he is as heady and smart and tough a corner as there is. He's a difference maker. He had 2 picks yesterday, had 5 tackles. He's really, really good. Noah Igbenogany was a first-round pick, and he kind of didn't really work out in Dallas and Miami, but he's got talent, and he's playing really, really well. And then they traded for Marshawn Lattimore. Yeah. And Lattimore is a number 1 corner with a lot of pelts on the wall in this league. So you got 3 really good corners, and then you got 3 second-level defenders in Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jeremy Chin that are making lots and lots of tackles. And you got great defensive tackles up front. You got good enough defensive ends. They hit in the draft on a couple of guys like Quan Martin. Mm-hmm. Quan Martin's a very, very good player. Very good player. So you had they may have had one of the best safeties in Quan, one of the best corners in Sainristil. And then they traded for Lattimore. They've got a really good front. They're good. They're good. I mean, Allegretti added to their line, at guard. So he gives them a really good offensive lineman. They got a big physical back in Brian Robinson. They got a back they can flip it to in the flat in Eckler. Daniels is very, very calm, very, very accurate.
Yep.
And he didn't take a single sack yesterday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I think the
under
Commanders are going to Philly.
Fair.
I think they're going to beat Philly in Philly.
You think they're going to beat Philly? Is that a Jaden? Is that a Hurts situation, or is this an operation? You just like where the Commanders are compared to where the Eagles are? Because if you take away the quarterbacks, which of course is a silly thing to say, but we're going to say it. You take away the quarterbacks, I like Philadelphia everywhere else. As much as I can agree with a lot of what you just said about the Commanders, we're talking about the best offensive line, 2 $20 million receivers, Saquon Barkley, great tight end, defense that flies, absolutely flies. And if Mitchell is in, now you have a great corner as well. I like the Eagles everywhere but quarterback. So are you just that down on Hurts that you like the Commanders to win this game?
I'm not down on Hurts at all. I just think Hurts is physically probably not great. I mean, also, I think the Commanders have played the Eagles pretty straight up. I mean, if you go back to the game, earlier this year, Washington had a 10-3 lead in the first matchup in Philly. They were up 10-3 late in the third quarter. And then all of a sudden, Philly's offensive line just took control. And Barkley had a 23-yard touchdown run. He had a 39-yard touchdown run. And all of a sudden, a 10-6 Washington lead. It was 26-10 Philly,
That's an absurd game.
Yeah, so that game, that was a Thursday nighter, I believe, or a Monday nighter. And it was
definitely games have been absurd this year.
So that was the first matchup, right? And so I thought Washington played them really tough in Philly and lost. But then they had the rematch in Washington or in Maryland, and the Commanders put up 36 on this Eagles defense. Now, granted, Hurts was not in the game, or Hurts got knocked out of this game, and they went to Kenny Pickett. So that was a major factor.
Yeah,
but Barkley ran for 150 in the game. But Jaden Daniels ran for 9 times for 81 yards and threw 5 touchdowns. And, if you look at that second matchup, now you got the team that you got kind of right now with Bobby Wagner and Sainristil and Louvu and Chin and, Lattimore and Quan Martin. I mean, these guys were started making a lot of plays. So I like Washington. I think Hurts is not going to have the same mobility. They're not going to have Quinyon Mitchell. Didn't they lose a linebacker in this game as well? Oren Burks, I thought, played tremendous.
Burks did play an incredible game. I don't think
they lost Nakobe Dean last week.
Last week they lost Dean. I'll have to check the injury report.
So they lost Nakobe Dean last week. This week they lose Quinyon Mitchell. That's arguably, one of their best linebackers and one of their best corners.
Oh yeah.
And there's
two of the better in the NFL.
What's that?
Two of the better in the NFL in general. Mitchell's been as good as anybody.
So I just really believe in Washington. I think Washington's got some magic going. They got a great vibe going. It's year one. There's no expectations. They're going to show up. They're loose. They know the Eagles really well. In the most recent matchup, they beat them. They were competitive in both games. I like Daniels. I like Daniels to outplay Hurts. Hurts without mobility is not Hurts,
no doubt,
and he's not a great passer.
No, he isn't.
I don't know if you've looked at Hurts's game log in the second half of the year, but
seven games under 200 passing yards this season. Now make it 8.
Well, I mean, let's just take the last games. So 128, he threw 4 against the Rams. 131 against Green Bay the week prior. He didn't play in the 22nd game. But he threw for 290 against the Steelers, but 108 against Carolina, 118 against Baltimore, 179 against the Rams. I mean, he's not having an epic year. He really isn't. No. So, and now he's really got to be hurting after yesterday. I mean, I thought I was amazed. I mean, he went into the tent. They put on a knee brace, and he looked like he didn't even want to put a lot of pressure on that leg. He did run a couple times after that. So obviously he finished the game. He's an incredibly tough guy. Very, very strong lower legs for sure. I think he squats over 1,000. I mean, he's really, really strong. But, man, he's feeling like hell today. And it'll be interesting to see how much he practices this week or what the reports are coming out of Philly's practices. Because I would be shocked if he practices this week.
I'm with you on that. I want to get into who is going to kick whomever wins the NFC championship game's ass. We'll flip it to the AFC on the other side of this break. Dieter and Larry hanging out for a little bit. JD in just a smidge. You're listening to 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.